There is a specific kind of quiet that settles in after a decision has been made. It is not the tense, waiting silence of a phone that refuses to ring. It is not the hollow ache of an unanswered message. It is the silence that you create, the silence that begins the moment you stop reaching, stop explaining, stop making yourself available. Your hand might still hover over the phone, a ghost of its old habit. Your heart might still lurch at the sound of a notification, a Pavlovian response from the months or years you spent on high alert. But something is different now. The air in the room has changed. The space he used to occupy with his presence, and more powerfully, with his absence, is now just space. And it is terrifying. And it is yours. You have stepped back. You have stopped being the one who bridges the gap, who sends the "just checking in" text, who likes his old photo as a gentle nudge. You have simply stopped. And in the vacuum that follows, 1,000 questions rush in. Does he notice? Does he feel the void? Is he confused, angry, or worse, is he relieved? Is he simply moving on, enjoying the peace, while you are here, wrestling with the echo of your own choice? This is the most dangerous moment, because this is where the mind tries to turn your withdrawal into a strategy. It starts calculating. How long until he breaks? If I hold out for 3 days, will he text on the 4th? Is my silence working? The moment you ask if it's working, you have already lost. You have turned your act of self-preservation into another performance for him. You have remained energetically available, just in a different, more painful way. But what if this silence is not a game? What if it is not a tactic or a test? What if your withdrawal is not a move on a chessboard, but a quiet, non-negotiable return to your own center? What if it is the first act of building a boundary, not of brick and mortar, but of energy and self-respect? When a woman who has been perpetually available suddenly becomes unavailable, she does not simply disappear from a man's life. She disappears from a specific role in his psyche, and this disappearance creates a profound, often unconscious disturbance. It's not just that his phone is quiet, it's that a mirror he used to look into has suddenly been taken away. To understand what happens in his inner world, we must first understand the role you were unconsciously asked to play. In the language of Jungian psychology, a woman who is always available, always understanding, always emotionally accommodating, is often carrying a projection. She becomes the living embodiment of the man's own undeveloped inner feminine, what Carl Jung called the anima. The anima is the archetype of life, of feeling, of connection, of soulful depth within a man's unconscious. When a man is disconnected from his own feelings, when he is afraid of his own vulnerability, he seeks a woman who can feel for him. He outsources his emotional life. He doesn't have to cultivate his own inner warmth because she is a constant, reliable source of it. He doesn't have to learn to soothe his own anxieties because a quick text to her will do the trick. She is not just a person to him, she is a function. She is the keeper of the emotional flame, so he doesn't have to. You were the one who remembered the small details. You were the one who could sense his bad mood from a one-word answer. You were the one who knew how to ask the right questions to draw him out, to make him feel seen, to validate his struggles. You did this because you were likely empathetic and caring. But in this dynamic, your gift was turned into a job. You became his emotional manager. And so, you built a persona, a mask, around this role. The persona of the cool girl, the understanding woman, the low-maintenance partner. This persona whispers, "I don't have needs. Your needs are more important. My happiness is contingent on your comfort. I can wait. I am patient." You were praised for being so easy and undemanding, but underneath that persona, a part of you, your shadow, was starving. The shadow holds everything you had to disown to be accepted in that role. Your need for reciprocity, your frustration at the lack of effort, your desire to be pursued, your anger at being taken for granted. For a long time, you kept that shadow locked away. But the cost became too high. The emotional exhaustion, the feeling of being invisible, the slow erosion of your self-worth. Eventually, something in you said, "No more," and you withdrew. You stopped performing the role. You took the persona off. This is the deeper truth. Your silence is not just silence. It is the sound of a role being vacated. It is the sound of a projection being returned to its owner. So what happens to him? On the surface, his reaction is driven by his ego. His ego is the part of his consciousness that manages his identity, his sense of control, and his self-image. For the man who is used to your availability, your sudden absence is a direct blow to his ego. First, there is confusion. His world had a predictable pattern. He would pull away, you would move closer. He would be silent, you would fill the silence. This was the unspoken contract. By withdrawing, you have broken the contract. His ego doesn't have a script for this. He might check his phone, thinking it's broken. He might reread your last conversation, looking for a clue he missed. He is looking for a logical reason, because the ego hates a vacuum. It hates mystery. If confusion doesn't bring you back, the ego may move to frustration or anger. Who does she think she is? After everything, she's just going to ignore me? This anger is a defense mechanism. It's easier for his ego to feel indignant than to feel the sting of potential rejection, or, even deeper, the loss of control. Your availability gave him a sense of power. He set the pace. He decided the level of intimacy. Your silence takes that power away. The control panel he was used to operating is suddenly dark. But this is only the surface level, the theater of the ego. The real event is happening in his unconscious. When you, the carrier of his anima projection, withdraw, he is forced into a confrontation with the very thing he was using you to avoid, his own inner emptiness. The warmth he felt from you was not his own. The validation was external. The feeling of being emotionally okay was dependent on your presence. Now, there is a cold draft in his inner world. He feels a nameless anxiety, a sense of lack, a disquiet he can't quite articulate. He might try to fill it quickly, with work, with hobbies, with other distractions, perhaps even with the attention of another woman. He is looking for another screen to project his anima onto, another person to take up the job you just quit. This is a critical juncture for him. If he successfully finds another distraction, he learns nothing. The pattern will repeat. He will find another accommodating woman, and the cycle will continue until his unconscious presents him with a crisis he cannot distract himself from. But if he doesn't find an immediate replacement, or if the replacement doesn't quite fit the role, something else begins to happen. The silence you have created starts to work on him. It is no longer a blank space. It becomes a mirror. In your absence, he is left alone with himself. The questions you used to ask him, he must now ask himself. The comfort you used to provide, he must now find within. The silence forces him to feel the contours of his own emotional landscape, and he may be shocked to find how barren it is. This is where a flicker of genuine feeling, beyond ego, can begin. He starts to remember not just your availability, but your essence, the way you laughed, the specific quality of your attention, the feeling of being truly seen by you, not just serviced. These are not memories of a function, they are memories of a soul. His unconscious is beginning to withdraw the projection and see the person. This is when he might feel a pang of genuine loss. It's not the ego's frustration at losing control. It's a deeper, more soulful ache. It's the anima, no longer projected onto you, stirring within him, asking for attention. He might feel regret, not just, I miss what she did for me, but a dawning awareness of, I miss her. I didn't value her. Will this feeling lead him to reach out? Perhaps. But the man who reaches out from this place is different from the one who texts out of ego-driven panic. The ego-driven text is demanding and controlling. Where have you been? Why are you ignoring me? It seeks to re-establish the old pattern. The text that comes from a deeper place is often more tentative, more vulnerable. I was thinking about you. I hope you're okay. It is a feeler, an acknowledgement of your separate existence, not a demand for your service. It is his own anima, however weakly, trying to make a connection for the first time, rather than just plugging into an external power source. But here we must turn the camera back to you, because this entire process in his inner world is secondary. The primary story is happening inside you. Your journey is not about manipulating his psyche into having an epiphany. Your journey is about what you do with the space you have created. Think of it like this. For a long time, you were living in the hallway of your own house, with the front door wide open, waiting for him to visit. You ate your meals there, you tried to sleep there, always on alert, always in a state of readiness. Your life was lived in a drafty, public, transitional space. You were not inhabiting your own home. When you decide to stop being available, you are finally, quietly, closing that front door. The first feeling is the shock of the silence and the containment. The sounds of the outside world are muffled. The draft is gone. But the house feels unnervingly empty. All the rooms you neglected in favor of waiting by the door are now visible. The dust on the furniture, the unopened books, the unplayed piano. This is your inner life, which you abandoned while you were on duty. The temptation is to immediately throw the door open again. The emptiness feels more painful than the draft of waiting. This is the moment your own abandonment complex gets activated. This is the deep-seated fear, often from childhood, that if you are not actively pleasing someone, if you are not useful, you will be left alone forever. Your silence is a test, not for him, but for you. Can you sit with the fear of being abandoned? Can you tolerate the discomfort of your own company long enough to rediscover its value? This is where you must consciously refuse to make it a game. You must resist the urge to check his social media, to ask mutual friends about him, to look for signs that your silence is working. Every time you do that, you are cracking open the door and peeking out, losing all the warmth and safety you have just begun to build inside. Instead, you must turn your attention inward. Walk through the rooms of your own house. What is in here? What music have you forgotten you love? What friendship have you neglected? What creative project have you put on a shelf? What does your body need? A long walk, a hot bath, a deep, restorative sleep without the anxiety of checking your phone. This is the process of individuation in miniature. Individuation is Jung's term for becoming a whole, integrated individual, distinct from the collective and from the roles we are asked to play. It means withdrawing your projections from others and taking ownership of your own inner world. By closing the door, you are taking the first step. You are declaring that your inner space is no longer a public waiting room. It is a private home. As you spend more time in your own house, a miraculous thing happens. It starts to feel like a home again. You clean the dust, you open the books, you start to play the music. You fill the space not with anxious waiting, but with your own presence. The emptiness transforms into a rich, creative solitude. Your center of gravity shifts from him to you. You stop looking for validation from the outside because you are generating it from the inside. This is when your silence truly becomes a boundary, not a game. A game is played for an audience of one, him. A boundary is established for an audience of one, you. A game is a question. Will you come back? A boundary is a statement. I am here. This is my space. I will not abandon myself again. And your energy changes completely. The frantic, needy, anxious energy of the woman waiting in the hallway is replaced by the calm, grounded, self-possessed energy of the woman who is at home in herself. This energetic shift is palpable. It is something he will feel on an unconscious level, whether you are in contact or not. It is the difference between a vacuum that begs to be filled and a solid form that commands respect. Now, what happens if, after all this time, he knocks on the door? The old you, the one living in the hallway, would have flung the door open with relief, gratitude, and a desperate, "I missed you so much." You would have immediately reverted to the old role, proving that your absence was just a temporary protest, a tactic that worked. The dynamic would reset, and the cycle would begin again. But the woman who has been inhabiting her own house hears the knock differently. She is not startled by it. Her peace is not dependent on it. She walks to the door, calmly. She does not throw it open. She opens it just enough to see who is there. And she looks at him not as a savior, but as a visitor. She is not assessing him for his potential to complete her. She is assessing him for his capacity to respect her home. She is listening not just to his words, but to his energy. Is he here to take, or is he here to connect? Is he trying to pull her back into the hallway, or is he willing to be invited into her living room as a guest who respects the rules of the house? The questions in her mind are different now. Not, does he love me? But, does he respect me? Not, will he stay? But, do I even want him to, in the state he is in? Not, am I enough for him? But, is he enough for me? This is the integration of your animus, your own inner authority. The animus is no longer projected onto him as the arbiter of your worth. You have claimed it for yourself. You are the one who decides who gets access to your energy and your space. He will feel this change immediately. He is not meeting the anxious, accommodating girl he left. He is meeting a woman who is grounded in her own being. Her silence was not a punishment for him. It was a gift to herself. She is not bitter or cold. She is simply whole. She does not need him to regulate her emotions. She is her own source. This is terrifying for the man's ego, but it is deeply intriguing to his soul. He is meeting a woman who does not need to be his emotional manager, which means he is being invited, perhaps for the first time, to be a man who manages his own emotions. He is being offered a relationship between two whole people, not a codependent contract between a user and a supplier. Whether he is capable of stepping up to that invitation is his journey, not yours. Many are not. They will retreat in the face of such wholeness, because it demands more than they are willing to give. They will go in search of another open doorway, another woman living in a hallway, and if that happens, you will feel a moment of sadness, but it will not shatter you. You will simply close your door again and return to the peace of your own home, grateful for the clarity. But some men will be captivated. They will see in you not what they want to project, but what they aspire to in themselves, a sense of inner authority, of self-possession. They will understand that to be with you, they must meet you as an equal. They must do their own inner work. They must learn to knock on the door respectfully and wait to be invited in. If this reflection names something you have been feeling but could not articulate, take a moment to acknowledge the shift. Acknowledge the courage it takes to close the door, to sit in the uncomfortable silence, and to choose yourself over the hope of someone else. The ultimate paradox is this: the moment you stop needing him to come back is the moment he might genuinely want to. But by then, it will matter so much less. Your happiness will no longer be hanging on that hook. Your silence ceases to be a strategy the moment you fall in love with the life you are building in his absence. You are not waiting for him. You are not punishing him. You are simply, finally, coming home to yourself. And it's a homecoming that has been long overdue. The peace you find there is something no returning text message could ever offer. It is the reward in itself. The question was never whether he would notice your absence. The real question was always whether you would finally notice your own presence. And once you do, once you truly inhabit your own life, you become unavailable not as a tactic, but as a truth. You are no longer a space he can visit at his convenience. You are a home, and you are the one who holds the key. My silence is not a game, it is my return to myself. But this process is not just a psychological one. It is etched into your very cells. It is a story told by the body. For as long as you were perpetually available, your body was a vessel of tension. Think back. Remember the tightness in your shoulders, braced for the next disappointment. The shallow breaths you took while typing out a carefully worded text, trying to be breezy and undemanding. The knot in your stomach that was your constant companion. The physical manifestation of anxiety and hope. Your body was a satellite dish, perpetually oriented in his direction, its systems on high alert, draining your life force in a constant, low-grade state of fight or flight. Your phone was not just a device, it was a bodily organ, an extension of your nervous system, and every notification, or lack thereof, sent a jolt of cortisol or a pang of despair through your veins. When you close the door and commit to the silence, you begin a profound physiological detox. At first, the body protests. It is accustomed to the drug of his intermittent attention. The stillness feels like withdrawal. You might feel restless, jittery, your thumbs still twitching with the muscle memory of checking for his name. This is the body memory of waiting. It is crying out for its familiar pattern, even a painful one. But if you can stay with this discomfort, if you can breathe through it, something begins to shift. One day, you will notice your shoulders have dropped an inch. You will take a deep, belly-filling breath and realize you haven't breathed like that in years. You will feel the solid ground beneath your feet, a sensation of rootedness that was impossible when you were energetically floating in his orbit. This is the feeling of your life force, your prana, your chi, returning to you. It is no longer being broadcast outward, searching for a signal. It is circulating within your own system, warming you from the inside out. You are recalibrating your nervous system from a state of sympathetic dominance, the fight or flight of anxious attachment, to one of parasympathetic rest, the rest and digest of self-possession. You start sleeping more deeply. Your food tastes better. The world seems to have more color. This is not a metaphor. It is a biological reality. You have called your energy back, and your body, that faithful servant, is responding with profound relief. It is learning, on a cellular level, that its primary job is not to monitor an external threat or wait for an external reward, but but to maintain its own sovereign well-being. It is learning the feeling of safety, a safety generated not by his reassurance, but by your own presence. This journey inward also forces you to confront the parts of yourself you exiled in order to play the role of the understanding woman. This is the deeper work with your shadow. The shadow, as Jung described it, holds everything we deem unacceptable about ourselves. For you, this was likely your anger, your neediness, and your raw desire. To be the cool girl, you had to suppress your anger at being ignored. You had to pretend your legitimate need for reciprocity was an ugly, demanding flaw. You had to mute your own desires to make space for his. Now, in the quiet of your own house, these shadow figures come knocking. At first, you may be terrified of them. The rage that surfaces feels disproportionate, volcanic. The feeling of neediness feels like a bottomless pit of shame. But the path to wholeness is not to lock these figures in the basement. It is to invite them in, to listen to them. Your anger is not a monster. It is a guardian. It is the part of you that loves you fiercely, the part that was screaming no all along. When you learn to listen to your anger, not as a script for revenge, but as a source of information, it becomes an incorruptible compass, pointing you toward your non-negotiables. It becomes the fuel for building strong, healthy boundaries. And your neediness? It is not a flaw. It is the orphaned expression of your human need for connection. You were shamed for it, so you tried to disown it. But now, you can turn toward that part of you with compassion. You can begin to give yourself the validation you were seeking from him. You can learn to mother your own inner child, reassuring her that she is worthy of love and attention, and that you will never again abandon her for a scrap of someone else's. This is the alchemy of the shadow. You are not getting rid of your dark parts. You are integrating them. They become your power. You are no longer a fragmented persona, but a complete and therefore formidable woman. And what of his shadow? Your newfound wholeness becomes a mirror not just for his soul, but for his darkness too. The man who relied on your accommodating nature did so to avoid his own shadow. His shadow contains his emotional cowardice, his manipulative tendencies, his terror of being truly seen in his inadequacy. When he is confronted with your integrated self, a woman who is no longer a screen for his projections, he has two choices. The most common path is to project his shadow onto you. He needs an external villain to avoid the inner reckoning. Suddenly, you are the one who is selfish for having needs. You are cold for having boundaries. You are crazy for expressing the anger you were never allowed to feel. He will try to paint you in the colors of his own disowned darkness. This is a painful but powerful confirmation that you have broken the dynamic. You have refused to carry his shadow for him, and it is lashing out. But there is another, rarer path. A man on a more conscious journey might see your wholeness and feel not condemnation, but inspiration. He recognizes your courage because he knows how much he lacks it. Your integrated anger makes him question his own passivity. Your self-possession highlights his own dependency. You become a living, breathing invitation. You are not telling him to change. Your very being is showing him what is possible. This is the man who is captivated, the one who understands that to be near a fire like yours, he must learn to tend his own flame. This brings us to a later, more subtle test. Let's say he has knocked on the door. He was vulnerable. He used the word I and spoke of his own feelings. You, grounded in your own home, cautiously opened the door. Contact is reestablished. The real test is not in this grand re-entry. It is in the quiet Tuesday that follows. The first test is the test of conflict. Before, any disagreement would send him into a stony silence, and you into a flurry of placating and apology. Now, a disagreement arises. Do his old defenses kick in? Does he withdraw, punishing you with absence, implicitly demanding that you fix it? Or does he stay? Does he, however clumsily, attempt to articulate his perspective while also hearing yours? The man who has begun his work does not run from conflict. He sees it as a necessary part of intimacy, a bridge to deeper understanding, not a threat to his ego. The second test is the test of your needs. You say, I need a quiet night alone tonight, or I'm feeling fragile, I need some reassurance. The old him would have heard a demand, a criticism, a burden. He would have become defensive or distant. The man who is doing the work hears information. He doesn't make it about him. He hears that the sovereign woman he is with has needs, and he feels a genuine desire to meet them, not as a duty, but as an act of love. He respects your no as much as he values your yes. And perhaps the most crucial test, the test of your separateness. You get a promotion at work. You discover a new passion. You have a joyful, hilarious night out with your friends. Can he celebrate this with you? Genuinely? Or is there a subtle flicker of threat in his eyes? Is he insecure because your happiness was generated without him? A man who truly wants to be with a whole woman will love the parts of her life that have nothing to do with him. He will see her sovereignty not as a threat to his importance, but as the very quality that makes her so magnificent. Passing these tests is not about perfection. It is about trajectory. Is he on a path of conscious effort, or is he simply behaving well enough to regain access to your warmth? You, now firmly rooted in your own body and guided by your integrated shadow, will know the difference. You will feel it. In the end, the silence you created transforms. It is no longer the aching void of his absence. It is not even the solid wall of a boundary. It has become a sacred garden. It is a space of rich, fertile solitude, from which all healthy things can grow. It is the baseline of peace to which you can always return. Whether he is ever invited into that garden is no longer the central question of your life. The real love story was your return to it. It was the choice, made on a quiet, unremarkable day, to stop waiting in the drafty hallway and to finally walk into the warmth of your own home, close the door, and decide to stay. This journey was never about bringing him back. It was about bringing you back. And that is a homecoming worth any price.